Once upon a time, in a quiet coastal town where the mornings smelled of salt and the evenings came in slow and golden, there lived a 31-year-old man named James. James was the kind of person people described as having potential. His colleagues said it. His older brother said it. Even his father, a man of very few words, had said it once at the dinner table when James was 23 and had just turned down a job offer in another city because the timing didn't feel right. "You have more potential than anyone I know," his father had said. "I just hope you use it before it uses you." James hadn't fully understood that at the time. He understood it a little better now. James worked as a copy editor at a mid-sized publishing house. The work was careful, quiet, detail-oriented, and he was good at it. But it was not what he had imagined for himself at 22. Sitting in his college apartment with a half-finished manuscript on his desk and a certainty in his chest that felt almost physical. He had wanted to write, not edit other people's sentences, write his own. He had ideas that kept him awake at night, characters that felt more real to him than some of the people he worked with, stories that pressed against the inside of his chest, looking for a way out. But the time was never quite right. When he was 24, he told himself he would start seriously writing once he had paid off his student loans and felt financially stable. When he was 26 and the loans were manageable, he told himself he would start once he had moved into a better apartment, somewhere with a proper desk and enough quiet to concentrate. When he was 28 and the apartment was fine, he told himself he would start once work settled down, once the big project was finished. Once the summer was over, once January came with its clean slate energy. January came, January went. He was 31 now. The manuscript that had sat half-finished on his college desk had been transferred from laptop to laptop across 3 computers and had not been opened in 4 years. He knew it was there. He thought about it the way you'd think about a letter you have been meaning to write to someone, with a mixture of guilt and intention that never quite becomes action. One Friday evening, James met his oldest friend, Carter, for a drink at a bar they had been going to since their mid-20s. Carter was a landscape architect who had built a small but respected firm over the past 6 years. He was not wealthy by any dramatic measure, but he was doing exactly what he had decided to do. And it showed in the particular ease of a person whose daily life and inner life are not in constant argument with each other. They talked about the usual things for a while. Then Carter asked, without any particular agenda behind the question, "How's the writing going?" James turned his glass slowly on the table. "I haven't really started properly yet." Carter looked at him, not with judgment, just with the honest attention of someone who has known you long enough to notice the gap between what you say and what you mean. "You said that 3 years ago," Carter said quietly. James nodded. "I know. What are you waiting for?" James opened his mouth and then stopped. He had answers. He always had answers. The apartment was still a little loud. Work had been demanding. He wanted to take a writing course first, build a stronger foundation before committing seriously. But sitting across from Carter, in the particular honesty that late evenings with old friends tend to produce, all of those answers felt like what they actually were, excuses dressed in the clothing of reasons. "I don't know," James said finally. And it was the most truthful thing he had said about his writing in years. The following week, James's publishing house hosted a small evening event for one of their authors, a woman named Ruth, who had just released her 3rd novel. Ruth was 64, sharp at, spoke about writing the way experienced tradespeople speak about their craft, practically, without sentimentality, with a deep respect for the difficulty of the work. After the formal part of the evening, James found himself standing near the window with Ruth while the room buzzed quietly around them. He wasn't sure what made him say it. Perhaps it was Carter's question, still sitting unanswered in the back of his mind. But he told her that he had always wanted to write, that he had a manuscript he had started years ago, that he kept waiting for the right conditions before committing to it seriously. Ruth listened without expression. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment, looking out the window at the street below. Then she said, "How old are you?" 31, James said. She nodded slowly. "I wrote my first novel between the ages of 31 and 34. I wrote it in 40-minute windows during my lunch break at a job I didn't love, on a laptop balanced on a corner of a desk I shared with 2 other people. The conditions were never right. They were never going to be right." She paused. "The conditions don't produce the work, James. The work produces the conditions. You write the book, and then your life rearranges itself around the fact that you're a person who wrote a book, but you have to go first. Life does not go first." James looked at her. "What if I start and it isn't good enough?" Ruth turned from the window and looked at him directly. "What if you wait another 10 years and it still isn't written? Which of those 2 outcomes is actually worse?" She said goodnight and moved back into the room, leaving James standing at the window with a question he could not answer his way out of. He went home that night and opened his laptop. He navigated to the folder he hadn't opened in 4 years. The manuscript was there, 53 pages, ending mid-sentence, as if the person who wrote it had simply stood up one day and walked away, intending to come back in a few minutes. He read through it slowly. It was imperfect. There were sections that felt clumsy, dialogue that didn't quite land, a structure that needed rethinking. But there was also something alive in it, something that had been written by a younger version of himself who had not yet learned to be afraid of being seen, who had put things on the page with a directness and an energy that for years of waiting had not managed to produce. He sat at his desk for a long time after finishing. Outside his window, the town was quiet. A car passed occasionally. The clock on his wall moved steadily forward, the way clocks do, indifferent to whether the person beneath them is using the time or simply watching it go. He opened a new document. At the top, he typed a single line. Then he kept going. He did not write brilliantly that first night. He wrote haltingly, slowly, circling back and deleting and starting again. But he wrote, and the next evening he wrote again. And the evening after that, not in long, uninterrupted sessions with perfect lighting and complete silence, but in the 40-minute windows Ruth had described, carved out of ordinary evenings after dinner, before the tiredness of the day became total. Some nights, the words came with a kind of ease that surprised him. Some nights, every sentence felt like pushing something heavy up a slight incline. He began to notice something that he had not expected. Tact. The waiting, that persistent background hum of guilt and intention that had sat quietly beneath his daily life for years began to fade. Not because the writing was going perfectly, but because the waiting had ended. And waiting, he was beginning to understand, had its own particular weight. A weight you only fully feel when you finally put it down. 6 months later, James had 80 new pages. Combined with the original 53, he had the rough shape of something real. It was nowhere near finished. It needed months more of work, and after that, a rewrite, and after that, the long, uncertain process of trying to find it a place in the world. He knew all of this clearly, but he also knew something that no amount of waiting had ever given him. He knew he was doing it. One evening, he called Carter. "Remember when you asked me what I was waiting for?" he said. "I remember," Carter said. "I think I was waiting for a guarantee," James said. "I wanted someone to promise me that if I started, it would work out. That the time I spent on it wouldn't be wasted, that it would be good enough." He paused. "But that's not how it works, is it?" "No," Carter said simply. "It never was. There is a conversation we all have with ourselves. It runs underneath the ordinary noise of daily life, quiet enough to ignore, but persistent enough to never fully disappear. It is the conversation between the person we are and the person we intended to become, between the life we are living and the life we told ourselves we would begin when the time was right, when things settled, when we felt ready. But here is what nobody tells you about the right time. It does not exist as a destination. It is not a place you arrive at after enough preparation and patience. The right time is not waiting for you somewhere further down the road. Fully formed and perfectly lit, ready to welcome you into the version of your life you have been postponing. The right time is made, not found. It is made in the ordinary moments of an ordinary Tuesday evening when nothing is particularly perfect and nothing is particularly ready, and you begin anyway. It is made in the decision to stop treating your own life as a rehearsal for something that will begin later, because later is a word that has no fixed address. You can send your dreams there, but you cannot follow them. You can defer your life there, but you cannot live it there. James is still writing. The book is not finished. Some days the work is good, and some days it isn't, and he's learning to sit with both of those things without using either one as a reason to stop. He has stopped waiting for the conditions to be perfect because he finally understands what Ruth understood. The conditions will never be perfect. They weren't perfect for anyone who ever made something real, but pressed forward anyway into the imperfect, ordinary, available hours of their actual lives. And they built something inside that imperfection. You have something unstarted. Something you have been meaning to begin when the time is right. You know what it is. You have always known what it is. It sits in the back of your mind, the way James's manuscript sat in that unopened folder, present, waiting, quietly accumulating the weight of postponed years. The right time will not announce itself. There will be no morning when you wake up and every condition is finally met and the world holds still long enough for you to begin without risk. There will only be today, imperfect, incomplete, ordinary today. And the single most powerful thing you can do inside it is begin. Not tomorrow, not when things settle, not when you feel ready. Now.